So let's begin work on some of the core structure for meal wheel. And as a beginning point, let's think about what this home screen should look like. I sent you a couple of images that I thought were some pretty cool placeholders. That's just a button that's kind of up and down. And I'd like to add that to this as our decide what restaurant I should go to. So I'm going to get a button. Previously, I think we've just used buttons that had text on them, but now we're going to make an image button. I've dragged a button out here onto my storyboard. Now I need to add the images to my Xcode project. And the right way of doing that is to add them to this images Xcode assets folder. So if you click on that, you'll see this. There's an app icon that you get. This collection of images is built in. We want to add those up and down buttons, which I emailed you and you should download to your computer. I'm going to click both of them and drag them in and drop them here in the Xcode, the image Xcode assets. That'll add this. You can actually put different images for the different resolution, different densities of the screen. So this would be what before was a 2x image. That would be on the devices that have like the double resolution, and the 3x would be the devices that have really high resolution, like a 6 plus. For our purposes, I think this would be fine at a 2x. So now that I put these in the project, I can go back to my storyboard and click on my button, and I'd like to change it from, I'd like to set the image here to be the up image. So that puts the button there. I don't want it to say button anymore, so I'm just going to delete that text. I would like this button to be centered horizontally and vertically. So I'm going to control drag from the button to its container. I'm going to press Command and click center horizontally and center vertically. And then I'm going to check my constraints and make sure they look okay. Oh, that's no good. I want both of them to say 0, 0. And I'm going to click Update Frames to just make sure that my storyboard is showing what the way it'll really be laid out. Buttons in iOS have different states. What we configured was the default state of the button. If you click up here, you'll see these are the other 3 states that are built in, highlighted. That's when you press down on it. Disabled is when it's disabled. And selected is when the selected property is set to true. I don't think we're going to be using selected and disabled, but we're definitely going to be using highlighted. So click on highlighted and then change the image here to down, so that when you press down on it, that turns it into the highlighted state. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to run that. I just want to confirm that that behaves the way I expect it will. Hey, it's cool, right?
Did you make the button?
I did not make this button. It was a resource I found online. No, it's just an image. It just both of them are in the same spot, so they look good when you just replace the one image for the other one. It looks like you're pressing down. I find it very satisfying. I don't know about you. Yeah, it's cool.
How did you drag the button in the game? Sorry, my screen is so tiny. I find it
Yeah. The question is, how did I drag the button in? And the answer to that is, first I clicked on the images XC assets, and then from wherever in the Finder the files are, I just clicked and dragged into the assets.
Okay, and then how do you add it to the button as well?
Okay, so then on the button, you click on the button.
Is it some setting in the right-hand panel?
It's in the right-hand panel under the Attributes Inspector. For the default state, we set the image property to be the up button, whatever the name of it was, and for the highlighted state, we set it to be down.
Okay.
So that's all we got. So we got all that for free without any programming. You could certainly program any of that stuff that you wanted to, but if you can configure it in Interface Builder, then I say do it that way. Okay, we'll also need we need this to be in a navigation controller. So I'm going to click on this view controller, and I'm going to say Editor, Embed in Navigation Controller. For now, I'm going to, when you click on the button, show a new view controller that will be the randomly chosen restaurant. So now I've embedded that in navigation controller. It's a little weird, they didn't line up straight. And for this, I would like to just go ahead and up here in the navigation item, put meal wheel. As the title. I'm going to run this again just to make sure it's still working okay. Good. So let's go ahead and put another view controller on the view, and let's get this main workflow represented on our storyboard. So I'm going to look for a view controller down here. Sorry, it's the first one. Click and drag this over, drop that on, and then reposition it. And this will be the view controller that shows the restaurant that was chosen. I'll go ahead and set up my segue for that by control dragging from my button to this view controller and set it to be the show segue. For now, let's at least put a label here that is the name of the restaurant. So I'll just put Taco Bell for now. I would like to make this a little more beautiful. I think I'll give it a custom font of Gil Sans. Let's go ahead and get some auto layout on here. We're going to add some leading space to the container margin, and we'll add some top space to top layout guide. Let me make sure that the constraints they put in were okay. Looks okay. I'm going to update my frames. That's where it'll actually be. That looks decent. And let me just, for now, put in one other label, which will be the dollar signs for this. Let me drag that. I'm going to give this a trailing space to the container margin, and I'm going to attach it to the baseline of this guy. So they'll be along the same baseline. See what I got? So I want the baseline to be aligned with 0 pixels difference, and the trailing space, I would like this to be the, we call this 16. Oops. Okay, update my view, update my frames. So let's give us the name of the restaurant and the dollar signs. Later we'll come back and add the additional stuff to our view, like the number of stars and the map, the hours and the phone button and the website button. Let's run this and make sure at least this much works. Boom. I don't want this to say meal wheel. I want it to say home. So if I click up here on the so I have to get it through here.
If you click on the navigation,
I want it to say home. Thank you. Can I not put a nav in here? So I had to drag a navigation item from here to here in order to put in this title. Okay, I think I want to say you're eating at. Oh, you're eat at. You're eating at Taco Bell. Good luck. It'd be nice to have a little motivational message as well. Okay. What I'd like to do next, since we have the basics of the view in the project, is to think about the model. Because we haven't really had a model in our previous projects before because the models are so simple. So let's think about what the model would be. As I see it, there's basically just one class that's important for us to model in this situation. What do you think needs to be modeled in this? What was that one class? A restaurant, yes. So we need to have a restaurant. Let's think about what properties a restaurant would have in our universe, in Meal Wheel. What do you think? Help me brainstorm. Price. Quality, that's like the rating, the stars. Its location, like lat long. Yeah, that'd be good to have.
Because, I mean, Taco Bell, you know what it is, but maybe some restaurants you don't really know.
Well, a description, that's a good idea.
the rating, I guess.
Maybe even a menu.
So this is a description, a little description underneath, like Taco Bell,
Hours of operation.
fast Mexican food. The hours of operation for every day of the week. Their website and their phone number, their name. I think name is going to be important. We don't have that represented anywhere in ours. That is something we could put in, delivery, whether or not they deliver. A logo, that would be kind of nice to include if they had such a thing.
Restaurants tend to have something.
The Chow Wagon does not have a logo, I don't think. Bell's, does Bell's have a logo?
Okay.
I think there's
little letters on that.
Well, it'll just
As
be
the arrow,
optional.
that's
okay.
It'll be an optional.
Should be optional, yeah.
And optional, yeah.
Depending on how we're keeping track of walking distance, whether or not you can walk to it or have to drive to it, that we need to store something there. So that maybe that might be a really good computed property.
If distance is greater than.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Drive.
All right. Well, let's
I guess fast food to sit down.
yeah, it's sort of its classification as a fast food or a sit-down restaurant would be important as well. So let's put some of these in a new file. We just need this to be a Swift file because it's going to be a plain old class. And I'd like to call this a restaurant. I think that's how you spell restaurant. That's always a tricky word for me. That U, it's like, where are we going to put the U? So let's make a restaurant object. So I'm going to have a class restaurant. And let's think about some of the properties. Again, let's write down some of these core properties that we need based on our wireframe. We definitely need a name. Yeah? You saw the error I just got. Swift is very hardcore about you not making, not leaving things uninitialized. So to help you with that, they'll give you a compilation error if you have any object that's not optional that doesn't have a value. So because I'm saying that I have the restaurant name is a string, but I don't give it something initially, then it's going to require me to write an initializer that will set it. I'd like to avoid that for now, if you'll allow me to. So I'm going to that's still a little ugly. What's that?
Is that the Swift way?
I don't know if this is the Swift.
Swift way would be string and then parentheses.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
But it's going to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, basically.
So they're saying another option would be to say var name equals string so that it has a value. It's just a string with nothing.
Or we could just add an
I'll go with this and see. What else is important here? I'm breaking my own conventions here, right? Those shouldn't be capitalized because they're not class names. They're instance members, so let's make them lowercase as they should. The phone, I think the phone should be a string as well. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking about it, their website, let's just make that a string too. There are certainly URL objects in here, but I don't think that's how we need to keep up with it yet. Perhaps the star rating. What would you say? Is that a double or is it an int?
You can get someone like a 4.2. I mean, it depends on how exactly what I would think yield has point something.
Maybe a double with the option of a half star. So just 0.5. Keep it simple.
If we're going to keep it simple, we should just make it ints. We could truncate it down to whatever. Which is kind of all I would want to show anyway. But we can keep it. We're keeping our model separate from our view, so we can deal with that later. But we can store it at the highest resolution. How about this fast food business? Let me go ahead and set those to be false.
More fast food than
Yeah.
not fast food around here.
Wow. Does anyone know what neg is actually equal to? Is that tricky? Print it and nothing comes out. It doesn't say it's nil. It doesn't say.
It should just be quote, quote.
Oh.
Is fast food the opposite of sit down? Is it possible to be, like, is that an either or kind of thing? You know, like a really nice Arby's.
Go in and sit.
Yeah,
I feel
that
like
fast food.
that does not make it sit down.
Yeah, I feel like fast food is its own classification in itself, like steakhouse, Chinese, fast food.
I think drive-through is the opposite.
Waffle House is pretty fast. I can get a meal in 5 minutes at Waffle
I
House.
think we should get rid of his fast food and say whether it's drive-through, because they can infer that they can get their food and leave quickly if they want, but if we leave it ambiguous for them, if there's not a drive-through, then it's probably.
So is it drive through,
I agree with drive-through.
or is it sit down or not sit down?
Almost everything is sit down. Drive through.
I feel like
Checkers doesn't.
You can sit down everywhere.
You can't sit down.
What about Segue?
There are some Papa John's that you cannot sit down in.
Yeah, there are some Domino's, I know.
You can
Mhm.
sit down outside of the shop and eat.
But McDonald's is definitely fast food, and it has places you can sit down.
So, as the user, what would you want to know?
Right.
You really want to know if there's a drive-through? This is our.
Well, drive-through is synonymous with that with fast food, that still cuts out the ambiguity, don't you think? Like, you're not gonna go to a Pizza Hut and then go to drive-through, like, you go to the drive-through, right?
You can go.
You can drive through at Pizza Hut. I've driven through a Pizza Hut more times than I have eaten in there.
Well, okay.
I think.
That's a bad example.
Yes, it is. So is drive-through, do we need another thing that captures this kind of restaurant?
I think that like I said, fast food should just be a description of like what type of restaurant that is. If it's steakhouse or Chinese buffet or fast food.
Just
It's
is
too many
food.
times.
That'll cover fast food or not.
So are you saying you're saying it's a completely different thing than a toggle
Like,
button?
what is description? Is description like a full out description, or is it just like what type of restaurant it is?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe we do need a type.
Because that's what I was saying. I thought it was going to go. I thought if it was fast food, it would go along with type. Sorry, I was thinking.
So what about, is deliver something you think is important enough to know? I could see that being I need somebody who delivers. Is that
Does anything end in your signal?
Pizza Hut, Domino's?
Doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of the app?
Domino's won't deliver unless it's over 10 minutes.
No, you're just deciding what you're eating. You're not deciding if you're going to
I
the
tried
restaurant.
it and
Yeah.
it has to be over $10.
Well, you might say, I am completely worn out. I don't know what food to get, but I'm getting somebody who will deliver. So I will spin the wheel, I will press the button, and it will choose between Domino's and Pizza Hut for me.
Cheapest meal would be really good.
Cheapest meal? Is that what you said, Jesse?
Cheapest.
It's like, what is the absolute minimum that I can get out of this restaurant for? And that's what I'm going to choose based
I
on.
think I know several people that would find that very helpful.
Well, let's look at this. If I were going to put down the cost, what's the data type of cost?
There's a special money type.
Hmm?
It's probably a special monetary type. Like
Well, really, the way we're storing cost is just a $1 sign, a $2 sign, or a $3 sign. All right, so we could do int, but then what does I could put a 32 in an integer. What does a $32 sign mean? So an enum was probably a cleaner way of saying this when it has to be just one of those three values. So I'm just going to put that up here. We're going to have a public enum. What should we call it? cost classification, cost type. So, cost tier. It sounds a little sad though. I just shed a cost tier. It's like a pun. Thanks for laughing. So in this case, we would have 3 levels. Did I use case here?
Yeah.
I bet that is that legal?
Sure.
I mean, they let you do emojis.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Equals emoji face.
Can we just put it in just a string?
No.
Can we not define the enumeration inside the class? Because it's only really used for the restaurant.
How's that sit with you?
It's kind of ugly.
I mean, we could say high, medium, low.
First, second, third, tiers.
We're just 1, 2, 3.
Tier 1, tier 2.
This is a low cost, a medium cost, a high cost. I don't like.
Remember what he said, Paul says, to always use very descriptive names. So I think even if it looks ugly, it's the swift way.
$1 sign is better, you're saying?
I don't like S's on the end
Cheap,
of them.
medium, expensive. Medium would be cheap.
Yeah.
Kind of cheap. Medium or expensive.
I think that's fine. $1 sign.
I mean, you can feed yourself with a low amount of money or something, but you can self-talk goes for what?
$1?
Cents.
I think $1.
Yeah.
And then,
And
Yeah, that's the way to go.
So we'll say this cost is a data type cost tier.
not a whole ton.
I don't know how much time we put into our meetings.
Mm-hmm. And let's just set it to be cheap by default. Do you know this trick? Kind of skipped over this. I'm not giving data types to this. There's no colon data type, and that's because Swift can infer what the data type is from what we're assigning into it. Does that make sense? So down here, this colon cost tier isn't necessary based on what's over here. So we could just say that, and it will infer it. There is going to have to be this long location business, and I think we're going to have to use a built-in structure that stores that. But for now, I'm just going to put it in as a lat.
We have it as a tuple, longitude and latitude.
For now, let me just do it like this, and then we'll fix it later with the right, I think it's structure that we'll want it to be, that has that information in it. Let me think about this. Are there any of these that we would want to be optional? I think that the website is optional. So in that case, I'm going to make this optional with the question mark. You think phone should be optional?
I think it should.
I mean,
Man,
everyone-
you would, it'd be pretty sad if you didn't have a phone, but I mean, I guess if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
we want to avoid ugliness of like 0, 0, 0, 0.
Right, right. Type might be something that should be in enum, where we have all these categories, but I don't know if I don't want to figure out where all the types of restaurants are because we may just forget one. So I think for now I would just leave it string, and we can see if it's worth it to put it into buckets. Star rating may also need to be. Yeah, it could just be 0. I'd kind of be inclined to make these, I mean, every restaurant must have a location, but we may not know it. So I would sort of be inclined to make these optional as well. So, did we forget anything? We forgot hours. On hours, that's a little bit more complicated, and I was thinking this may be a good time to use a dictionary. We could have a dictionary that maps the day of the week, based on a string perhaps, to the hours that it's open, which I think the simplest way would be to make it another string. So my idea is that in our code we'd say something like hours for day, and then we pass in the string MON or MONDAY, and we'd get back the value. That MONDAY would be the key, and the value would be a string that's like 9 o'clock a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. So let's see if we can do that. This is a dictionary is a data structure in Swift that maps keys to values. So I want this to be a hours for day dictionary. And it should map a string to a string. Okay, I didn't do this ahead of time, so let's look up.
You gotta put the initial.
This? Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, so close. Thanks, guys. And just to go ahead and set that up, let me just write a little method that will initialize that. So I'm going to call it init, func init hours for day. And it will say self dot, oh, sorry. This is a member of the restaurant class. I'm going to say self dot hours for day. Now I'm torn. I thought I could go ahead and put in all the days and have them with empty string hours so that all of the keys that I want, which would be the 7, would be represented. I will later have to come back and set what those are. I don't know if that's worth doing right now.
You can just say if key exists for the day to check that kind of stuff. That way you can always have something returned. You wouldn't be up there.
You're talking about later on, checking if the keys exist?
Doing it now, so if there is an empty one, you don't get some runtime error, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We just check that.
It seems ugly. I'd like the restaurant to take care of making sure that there's not going to be any runtime errors using it. I don't have to know the internal workings of restaurant to use it somewhere. I don't know. Let me. I think I'll just do it for now. It's a little ugly. It's a lot ugly. init is the name of the initialization method. And I really need to make sure that when I initialize one of these objects, that I call init hours for day so that it gets that. Oops. So init is like a constructor in Swift. Questions on this so far? So we've developed a class that's going to hold information about our restaurants. And we'll have this class to use when we want to pass in a restaurant object that we've randomly chosen from our set of restaurants, and we can show it on the which restaurant are you going to eat at screen. So this is the model part of the system. This is the view part of the system. We haven't done anything with the controller part, and that's where probably most of our work is going to be. So let's go ahead and make a controller. We're going to say add files to meal wheel. Sorry, we're going to say new file. I'm going to make a,
Make sure you're in iOS.
yeah, that's how I messed up before. Okay, I want to be iOS source, Cocoa Touch class. And I do want it to be a subclass of UI view controller. I think I want to call the first one the home view controller, and then maybe the second one the restaurant view controller, and then there'll probably be a filters view controller too, a filter view controller as well. I think that's all I may need. So this is the home view controller. I'm going to put it there. I can delete this view controller that was already there. I'm not using that anymore. I'm going to move it to trash. And I want to use the home view controller. I want to immediately after I make this, so I don't forget, come in here and set the class of this view controller to be not view controller, which was that empty class that we had, but to be the home view controller. That makes sense? This is really important. This is what links together the view and the view controller. So now this is the home view controller. And I guess while I'm in this zone, let me go ahead and make a new file, iOS source, Cocoa Touch class, which is the restaurant view controller. I'm going to do the same thing and connect it up with the second view. So that's that. So here, this one. So I'm going to make this the restaurant view controller. I'm going to go into this assistant editor where I can see two things at once. When I'm clicking on this view, then it's going to bring up the home view controller automatically because those are the two files that correspond to each other. I'm going to do this on viewDidLoad. Load. I'm just going to statically create an array of restaurants so we have something to work with. Actually, let me make that a member of this. So I'm going to have a var restaurants, which is an array of restaurant. So, and I need my parentheses to construct it. And then on viewDidLoad, I'm going to just statically create some restaurants and add them to that array. So we're kind of faking as if we had a data source. In the end, what I'd like to do is download this data source, all this restaurant information from a web service, maybe that we write, or maybe we could connect into the Yelp API. It's probably not, we'll probably need our own, and then populate this. But for now, we can fake it with this. So I want to say let Taco Bell equal restaurant, and then Taco Bell dot name equals Taco Bell. That's a $1 sign, right?
No, you change them to G.
Oh, there's a trick where instead of typing out cost tier dot cheap, it knows that it's the data type, so you can just say dot cheap. But I think it autocomplete on it, which was unsatisfying. Maybe I had to build my project. That works. Delivers. That's a false, right? Oh, what a world it would be, though. Is it coming soon?
They're trying, they're experimenting.
What about breakfast? I just realized we need a whole new rule. Do they serve breakfast?
That may be captured in hours.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
I'm pretty sure that they're testing the delivery service for Taco Bell.
They're not testing it around here.
Yeah, not around here.
They
So-
do have an app for
It-
Taco Bell now where you can order on the app.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's for that we're getting like free tacos with any purchase on there.
Last time I went to Taco Bell, somebody ordered a bag of Doritos. And that's all they ordered.
Give me a star rating for Taco Bell. It's a 4, right?
It's a 4.
Out of 5. 4.5? Okay. Good.
I mean, I know some of the items are disgusting on there, but some of them are.
Type? What's our type? Is this fast food? Fast Mexican food?
Just fast.
Just fast food?
I don't think you can really deem Mexican.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Mexican themed.
Pretty sure that's their website.
It's fast food.
Yeah. I'm going to skip over lat long phone. Did I hit everything that's required? Yes, try.
I got their phone.
You have their phone?
Yeah.
Well, give it to me.
731-989-0063. No.
Got that number right there.
That's it on my phone.
Did we get enough? I think that we have enough. We could say Taco Bell dot hours per day Monday equals what are their hours today? Anybody know? It's maybe 9 o'clock. They're open for breakfast, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think it's 11:30 or something.
They serve breakfast from 7 till 9.
Well, I think it's 11:30 when they close.
I think it's till 12, yeah.
That's 12 a.m., right? Midnight?
Yeah.
It's always hard for me to remember that. Okay, let's.
They close the doors at the
And I want to say that I want to append this to the array. So I want to say that the restaurants array dot append Taco Bell. Well, it took a lot of time. I don't think I want to do that again.
yeah, I'd write a constructor or something for it.
Let's see if we can get this working. I probably should have practiced this ahead of time, but I didn't. You see that what they give you down here when you're in a navigation constructor? They give you this code that's commented out. It's called the prepare for Segue function. Did you delete it? And what I think we're going to do is we're going to take a restaurant from the array on our home screen, our data set, and pass it to the view controller that shows the restaurant. So to do that, we can use Segue dot destination view controller to get the view controller that we're going to on this segue, and then pass in the object that we want that destination view controller to have. So I'm just going to say we're always going to Taco Bell. So we're going to say segue.destinationViewController dot. Now we're going to make up a property on that view controller. Would this be the selected restaurant, the chosen restaurant? What word would you like? Okay, selected restaurant equals restaurants at 0. I'm just going to get the first thing out of the restaurants array and pass it in. Now this thing doesn't exist yet, so we should make it exist. So I'm going to come over here to the restaurant view controller, and I'm going to give it a var selected restaurant, and I'm going to make that a data type of an optional restaurant. Let me go back to this view. Does this make sense? So I've created this property, this variable, a property on the restaurant view controller, and when I'm about to segue to that view controller, I'm going to set this property to be the one that I want. I would like to then set the title of that, the name of that restaurant, into that I'd like to set the title of the object that I pass in into the label. Let me get some more space here. Right here. So I want this label to get replaced by whatever text comes in. So to do that, I need a reference to this. I need an outlet. So I'm going to control drag this into my restaurant view controller. And I want it to be an outlet. And I want to call it restaurant name label. So the restaurant name label is this thing. I believe we can do this on viewDidLoad. That'll be safe enough. I'm going to say self.restaurantNameLabel.text equals whatever the selected restaurant is. So that would be selected restaurant dot name. Notice when you type this in, Xcode automatically puts that question mark in there, and that's going to unwrap that optional value and force what I want out of it. If there's nothing in that optional value, then I'll get a runtime error. So I'm really trusting that something is there. So I really should put that in an if let so that it doesn't execute it if there's not something there. For now, let's just roll with this and see how if it works. You think this is going to work?
No. You messed up on the view controller.
Did I type it wrong?
You have to cast that as a restaurant view controller.
Okay, so in order to get it like this, then I have to tell Swift, this destination view controller is not just a view controller, it is a restaurant view controller. So I'm going to say if let destination view controller equals segue.destination view controller as restaurant view controller. So if it can cast successfully capture the destination view controller as a restaurant view controller, then I want to say that DVC, which is this local constant I have access to, dot, as with a question mark, thanks, selected restaurant equals restaurants at 0, which is a terrible way of doing this at 0, but I'm just trusting that I actually have 1 in there, and I'm going to pass in the first one. We got 5 minutes, so roll with me on this. Now, what's not satisfying about that is that it already said Taco Bell on there. So let's make this say Dairy Queen, and let's see if it replaces Dairy Queen with Taco Bell. Then that'll show us if it actually worked. Sorry about that. Boom. Feels good, doesn't it?
Yes.
We have just made the first version of Meal Wheel that always sends you to Taco Bell. We could probably sell this to Taco Bell.
You always send okay.
Okay, what questions do you have about this? We're going to keep improving this. We'll iterate this to death. And I hope we'll end up with something that actually looks like a real-ish app. But I think this shows the pieces better than our other projects did. And I want you to have that kind of grounding to have a real model, a real complicated view, a real complicated view controller. Questions on this?